So guys, after having the luck to find my first ever wild haggis the other day, I think it is a good time to make a guide on how to actually find this elusive creature. The wild haggis is, up to this point, the only cryptid that has been added to the Honor Code of the Wild, and of course, being a cryptid, it is gonna be the rarest creature in the entire game. Although fortunately, we already have a very good idea on exactly what to do to actually spawn it. Now guys, before we start with the video, I just wanted to mention that my goal this year is to reach at least 35,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So guys, if you find this kind of content helpful, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. So we're gonna start by talking about the wild haggis as a species. First of all, it is important to mention that the wild haggis is a real species inside the codex. We cannot see the actual model of the creature in the picture, but we get to see an image of the real Scottish dish that is actually the model we get to see inside the trophy lodges whenever we place the haggis on our lodge. That's right, whenever you place a haggis inside your trophy lodge, this dish is what you are gonna see. For some people it is funny, some other people would prefer to see the actual model of the creature, just as me, but from a realistic standpoint, considering the haggis is not really a real creature, I would say having the haggis dish in the lodge instead of the real creature is definitely more realistic. I can see why they did it this way, but of course some people would prefer to see the actual model. However, if you pay attention to the plate on which the dish is placed, you'll notice it actually has some paintings of the actual haggis creature we get to hunt in game. The model of the haggis in game is, I would say, definitely weird looking enough to be able to tell it isn't just a regular animal. It essentially looks like a mix between a rat and a pig, you could say. I mean, just look at that snout, it is very pig-like, and the body looks like the body of a rat pretty much, especially looking at the tail and at the feet. Now, I would say one of the most surprising things about the model of this creature is how big it is compared to the player model. It is pretty much half the size of our characters, which is insane, making it similar to the size of, for example, a wild boar in game. They are huge. To be honest, this doesn't really make a lot of sense because in-game the haggis only weighs about 5 kilograms on average. So I imagine that they are filled mostly with air because they certainly aren't nearly as dense as a normal animal having this size with such a low weight. Well, I guess the fact they only have one organ inside their bodies really contributes to this. As you can see, funnily enough, the only organ the wild haggis have inside their bodies is actually the real Scottish dish, a real haggis. And the best part about it is that you don't even have to hit this organ in order to get the full score. However, make sure to use an ethical caliber for class 2 species, because you can actually poach a haggis if you don't use an appropriate weapon. I would personally recommend you using a class 2 2.6 rifle like the 233 Ranger or the Frost 257 for example, but please make sure to use the soft point bullets because only the soft point bullets are ethical for class 2. The polymer tip bullets cover class 3 to 7, while the soft point bullets cover class 2 to 6. You certainly don't want to use the polymer tips by accident on these guys. Now, when it comes to the different fur types, the wild haggis has 6 different fur variations, being these the bald calico, the crested blonde, the crested brown, the furry char cinnamon, the bald spotted, and the furry tawny. Every single of these fur variations seems to have the exact same chance of spawning, but I certainly wouldn't rule out the possibility of some of these fur types actually being a bit more rare than the others. Hell, there's also a possibility of some rare fur variations existing for this creature. We know that at some point someone posted a picture of an albino wild haggis there on the ground, but it was then confirmed to be modded. Although I personally wouldn't be surprised if it's actually possible to get this kind of classic rare fur types on the haggis. Maybe things like albino or melanistic are possible to obtain, but you can imagine how insanely rare they would be if they spawn the same way as with the rest of the species. We would only see like one rare haggis posted every 500 haggis pretty much. Now, talking about the scoring system for these creatures, the wild haggis has the exact same scoring system as any other animal. They are able to score as bronze, silver, gold, and diamond, exactly the same. So far, there's only been a single diamond wild haggis posted that we know of, but we know that they're able to make it at level 5 medium with a minimum trophy rating of 57. Certainly the rarest diamond on the entire game, and something that 99.9% of the players will never have the chance to obtain. I mean, there's pretty much absolutely no way to increase your chances of getting a diamond haggis. The only thing you can do is hope that the haggis that happens to spawn in your map turns to be level 5, which is extremely unlikely if the diamond spawn rate is once again similar to the rest of the species. Although, in my opinion, I would say it is very safe to say most of us would be very happy just finding a regular haggis. It doesn't matter if it's just a silver or a gold, just being able to place a haggis inside your trophy lodge is big enough of a flex. However, for the people that actually care about the size of their haggis and are willing to put in the time to eventually get a big one, the best part about how this creature spawns is that it is confirmed to be possible to be able to spawn more than one haggis and potentially multiple haggis on the same account. There have been multiple players who have already had the luck to spawn their second wild haggis, so of course the best and only way we have to hopefully increase our chances of spawning a big one is by trying to eventually spawn as many haggis as possible, which is certainly way easier said than done. I mean, as I said, if their diamond spawn rate is the same as with the majority of the species, then we'll be talking about having to kill an average of around 100 haggis per diamond, maybe more. In theory it should be possible to eventually spawn that amount of haggis, but just imagine the crazy amount of time it would take to spawn 100 haggis, for example. Essentially years, maybe more than 10 years, it's crazy. So yeah guys, it is essentially extremely hard to be able to get a diamond wild haggis, but it's certainly possible. You just have to win the lottery pretty much. Alright guys, now that we talked about all the basic stuff about these creatures, the next important thing that you absolutely need to know about the wild haggis is that they don't have a train time nor a rest time. The only thing they have is a feed time, and these feed times cover pretty much the entire day, meaning they are always gonna be either traveling from feed zone to feed zone or feeding. They definitely enjoy eating, that's for sure. That is why they are all round like that. So knowing the wild haggis will be either traveling or feeding pretty much all the time, the next important thing you need to know is of course exactly where it is possible to find them while they are in the middle of doing any of these activities. First of all, let's start by talking about the wild haggis home range. Here on Scotland, the wild haggis is only able to spawn within the top 2/3 of the reserve, all this area. For reference, I'm gonna leave you this info sheet right here that apart from including a heat map with many of the known locations where this creature has been found, it also includes pretty much everything you need to know about him, including the best equipment, zone times, fur types, etc. You know, this info sheet was made by Hell's Hunting and you can find it on her Discord server by clicking the link on the description below. I highly recommend you joining her server because it is full of very useful resources. So guys, now that we know the places where the wild haggis is able to spawn, it is time to go over the actual method that we know works for finding this creature. First of all, the most important thing we know is required to trigger the spawn of a wild haggis is to start by completing the second mission that is part of the main storyline. You simply have to go to the location they tell you to go on the map, play the bagpipes, and shoot the fake haggis. Once the second mission is completed, the second step is to spend consecutive time playing on the map. That's right, you have to spend consecutive time playing on the map without going to any other reserve. We know that, at least in the case of the new accounts, you only have to spend 4 in-game hours playing on the map in order for the wild haggis to spawn, while also following a specific route. However, in the case of the old accounts that already completed the second mission, which I'm pretty sure is the case for the majority of the people watching this video, while we don't know exactly how much time you have to spend on the map, by the looks of it, it is also just a few hours. Maybe not only 4 in-game hours like in the case of the new accounts, but probably something similar. For example, in my case, I didn't have a single session longer than 4 real hours while grinding for the Great One Road here in Scotland, and that was still enough for the wild haggis to spawn on my map. So if you have already completed the second mission and you've been spending some time playing here in Scotland recently, especially after the update, there's a very high chance this elusive creature is already somewhere in your map. However guys, there's something very important that we have to consider. This method to spawn the wild haggis could be considered the most basic method, essentially the one that guarantees the first wild haggis spawning by simply completing the second mission and spending time in the map. But what about the second haggis? What would be the way to spawn a second wild haggis if you can only complete the second mission once? Is it that maybe once you complete the second mission you will continue spawning haggis as long as you continue playing on Scotland, but only after you have already killed the last haggis to spawn? Maybe, but there are certainly many reasons to think that it is actually quite more complex than that. There are possibly multiple things that could trigger the spawn of a haggis beyond the basic method. And to be completely honest, we have no way to know of exactly what those things could be, because the developers are probably never gonna tell us. You know guys, for now, we certainly have to feel fortunate that we know of at least one method that actually guarantees the spawn of a haggis. It is certainly very simple, just completing the second mission and spending time in the map, but let's not forget, the hard part is not actually spawning the wild haggis. The difficult part is actually finding it on such a big home range. Because I mean, finding a single creature on such a big part of the map, that isn't easy by any means. So the next thing we're gonna talk about on today's video guys, is how to find the wild haggis once it is already in the map. Of course you have no way to know if it is already in your map, but if you already completed the second mission, and you had at least a couple sessions longer than 3 real hours, there's a very high chance it is already somewhere. So the first important tip I'm gonna give you guys is to start by dividing your map in different sections. We know the wild haggis home range only covers the top 2/3 of the reserve, this area, essentially anywhere above this river right here. So we could start by dividing their home range into 9 different sections. And after doing this division, you can start by focusing on one section at a time. Of course it is gonna take a lot of time, but that is the first thing you should do in my opinion. Now guys, the second tip is to start by paying very close attention to the hills, to the hillsides. You know, the hillsides are the most common place where the wild haggis are being found. So if you pay attention to the hills especially, you are definitely gonna increase your chances. I mean, I actually ended up spotting mine in one of these hills, and man, it was insane. However, even though you have a very good chance of actually spotting the haggis, what I would say is the most likely scenario is to find a track before anything. The track is basically gonna show a question mark instead of an icon, so pay very close attention to every single track you find guys. That is very important. And not only to the tracks, also to the calls, because the wild haggis has a very particular call. First of all, it is also gonna show a question mark on the call, and second, the sound of the call will be like bagpipes. It is a very particular sound, which honestly is super low volume at the moment for some reason. It is probably bugged, but you're still gonna be able to tell that a wild haggis is calling by paying attention to the icon on the screen. Now guys, the last tip I have for you that is also gonna help you find your first wild haggis is to go to your skills and enable the keen eye skill. You know, I have never used this skill to be completely honest, and I didn't need it to find my first wild haggis, but what this skill does is that essentially, every time you go to a watchtower, it is gonna unlock all the zones around the watchtower in a 500-meter radius I believe. So if you go and use this skill on every single of the watchtowers around the wild haggis home range, odds are that you are probably gonna unlock at least one zone for the wild haggis if it's already in your map. But anyway guys, that is gonna be pretty much it for today's video. I really hope it is useful, and don't forget, if you enjoy this kind of content, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would help a lot guys. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next video guys. Goodbye.